The Coca-Cola splashed across Emily Carter's white maternity dress like blood. The cold liquid ran down her stomach, staining the silk and drawing horrified gasps from the crowd. For a moment, time froze. The rooftop lights above Manhattan glittered like cruel stars, the jazz band fell silent, and every pair of eyes turned toward her. Chloe Barnes stood opposite her, a smirk playing on her red-painted lips, still holding the half-empty glass. "Oops," she said sweetly, her voice dripping with mock innocence. "Guess I missed the trash can." Emily didn't move. Her trembling hands rested on her rounded belly, as if to shield the baby from the humiliation. The warm summer air suddenly felt cold against her damp dress. Her husband, Jason Miller, the man she'd trusted with everything, stood frozen beside Chloe. His arm, God, his arm, was still around the other woman's waist. "Chloe, that's enough," Jason said weakly, his eyes darting between the two women. But Chloe only laughed, tossing her glossy brown hair over her shoulder. "Relax, babe. I was just having a little fun. It's not my fault your ex doesn't have a sense of humor." The crowd whispered. Someone took a photo. A waiter looked away, pretending not to see. On this glittering rooftop bar, the Skylark, with its panoramic view of the Empire State Building, appearances meant everything. No one wanted to interfere in someone else's scandal, especially not when the man at the center of it, Jason Miller, was a rising corporate executive who loved being admired. Emily's breath came shallow. Her baby kicked softly as if sensing her pain. She forced herself to straighten up, her voice calm though her heart trembled. "You think this is funny?" Chloe's grin widened. "Honestly, yes. You walked in here like you owned the place, all glowing and fragile. Maybe someone needed to remind you you're not the main character anymore." The words sliced deeper than the humiliation. Chloe's laughter, sharp and cruel, echoed above the city noise. Jason tried to mutter something, but Emily didn't hear it. Her ears buzzed with rage, grief, and disbelief. People whispered louder now. "Isn't that his wife? She's pregnant, poor thing. That's Chloe Barnes from marketing. She's been seeing him for months." Emily's eyes burned. But she didn't cry. Not here. Not in front of them. She grabbed her clutch and turned away, walking toward the elevator. Every step squelched softly as the sticky soda clung to her skin. No one stopped her. Not even her husband. The elevator doors closed, and for the first time in months, silence surrounded her. Her reflection in the mirrored wall looked like a stranger, pale, humiliated, broken. She touched her belly and whispered, "It's okay, sweetheart. Mama's got you." But deep inside, something dark was stirring. A line had been crossed. Her phone buzzed. A single message lit the screen. "Michael, little sis, I heard what happened at the Skylark. Stay there. Don't move." Her stomach clenched. Michael Carter, her older brother, wasn't just family. He was a name whispered in fear throughout New York's underworld. A man whose quiet smile made powerful men tremble. Emily wiped her tears, staring out the glass panel as the elevator descended. Somewhere far below, black cars began to pull up to the building. And when those doors opened again, the Skylark would never be the same. Emily Carter had always believed that love could fix anything. Growing up in a small Pennsylvania town, she was the kind of girl who baked cookies for neighbors, rescued stray cats, and dreamed of designing beautiful spaces that made people feel safe. Her mother used to call her sunshine in human form. Maybe that was why she never noticed the shadows creeping around her own life, until it was too late. At 28, Emily was living what she thought was her American dream. She'd moved to New York City 5 years earlier with a sketchbook, a second-hand iPhone, and $200 in her pocket. Through grit and late nights, she'd built a name for herself as a freelance interior designer. Her small apartment in Brooklyn overflowed with fabric swatches, color samples, and mood boards taped to every wall. Clients loved her warmth and her vision, the way she could turn even a one-bedroom into a haven. That was how she met Jason Miller. He'd been a senior marketing director at a tech firm in Manhattan with a penthouse view and a Mercedes parked outside. He'd walked into her life like a scene from a movie, charming, confident, saying all the right things. "You've got magic in your hands," he'd told her after she redesigned his office space. Emily, still naive enough to believe in fairy tales, had blushed and laughed. Within a year, she'd become Mrs. Jason Miller. Their wedding was small but perfect. White roses, soft jazz, a kiss beneath fairy lights. For a while, Everything felt real. Jason would text her in the mornings just to say, "Can't stop thinking about you." He'd surprise her with coffee from Starbucks, hold her hand as they walked through Central Park, whisper about their future in the glow of Manhattan's skyline. Then came the promotions, the longer hours, the unexplained absences. Jason started dressing sharper, spending weekends networking with clients. He upgraded his watch to a Rolex, traded their cozy apartment for a luxury condo, and bought Chloe Barnes, his new assistant, a Cartier bracelet for her hard work. When Emily found out she was pregnant, she thought it would bring them closer again. She imagined Jason would slow down, that he'd want to be there for every doctor visit, every heartbeat on the ultrasound. Instead, he grew colder. He stopped asking about baby names. When she showed him the tiny Tiffany blue booties she'd bought, he barely looked up from his MacBook. Still, Emily held on, because that's who she was. Someone who believed people could change. She convinced herself Jason was just stressed, that the woman leaving lipstick stains on his coffee mugs was a colleague, not a threat. She ignored the missed calls, the perfume on his jacket, the sudden shift in his smile. Her friends told her she was too trusting. But Emily didn't know how to stop giving people the benefit of the doubt. She'd grown up believing kindness was strength. Only now, with her belly heavy and her heart breaking, she realized kindness could also be a weapon used against her. That night at the Skylark, when Chloe laughed and threw Coke at her, something inside Emily cracked, but not in the way Chloe expected. It wasn't just humiliation she felt, it was awakening. Because beneath the softness and the pain, Emily came from a bloodline that didn't forgive disrespect. Her mother had been gentle, her father had been steady, but her brother, Michael Carter, the man whose name never appeared in newspapers, yet controlled half the real estate deals in Manhattan, was anything but merciful. And for the first time in her life, Emily wasn't going to ask for peace. She was going to demand it. Her smile might be gone tonight, but tomorrow, the city would remember her name. The morning after the Skylark incident, Manhattan woke beneath a soft haze, but for Emily Carter, the city had never felt sharper, colder, or more alive. She stood by the window of her small Brooklyn apartment. The skyline stretched before her like a promise and a threat. The Empire State Building glowed faintly in the dawn, its peak hidden in mist. The same city that had once held her dreams now felt like a battlefield. Her dress from last night hung over a chair, stiff with dried Coca-Cola. She could still hear Chloe's laughter echoing in her ears, still see Jason's silent, guilty face. Emily's reflection in the glass looked unfamiliar. Eyes swollen from crying, lips pale, posture straight as steel. She'd spent the night awake, every thought circling the same question. How could he do this to me? Her phone buzzed. "Michael, I'm downstairs." Emily's heart jumped. She hadn't seen her brother in over a year. Michael Carter wasn't the kind of man who showed up without a reason. He lived in a world of whispered deals and quiet power, the kind of world Emily had spent her life avoiding. Their late parents had raised them differently. Emily had chosen peace. Michael had chosen control. She slipped on a loose cardigan and opened the door. The hallway smelled faintly of coffee and old wood. Downstairs, a black Mercedes S-Class idled by the curb, its windows tinted. Two men in tailored suits stood beside it, silent and alert. When Michael stepped out, the air itself seemed to shift. He looked immaculate as always. Dark coat, Montblanc pen clipped to his pocket, expression unreadable. "You look tired," he said quietly. Emily tried to smile. "You heard what happened?" He nodded. "Everyone in the city heard. Someone posted a clip online. It's already at 500,000 views." Her stomach turned. "God." Michael's gaze softened for just a moment. "You should have called me, Em. I didn't want you involved." He tilted his head. Too late. They rode in silence through the streets of Manhattan. The city was waking up, delivery trucks rumbling, Starbucks lines forming, joggers weaving past traffic. But inside the car, the tension was thick. Michael watched her from across the seat. "I told you he wasn't worthy," he said. "I know." "And this, Chloe?" His voice was calm, but his eyes were pure ice. "She works at his firm?" Emily hesitated. "Marketing department. She's been with him for months." Michael turned his gaze toward the skyline. "He humiliated you in public. She laid hands on you while you're carrying my niece or nephew." "Michael, please," she said softly. "Don't do anything stupid." "Stupid?" He almost smiled. I don't do stupid, Emily. I do precise. They crossed into Midtown, the streets glistening after an early drizzle. As they passed Fifth Avenue, Emily saw her reflection in the car window. Pregnant, heartbroken, but not powerless anymore. Michael's presence was both comfort and danger. She knew what his protection meant. It meant someone, somewhere, would pay. He dropped her at a quiet cafe near Central Park, one she used to love before everything fell apart. As she stepped out, the wind carried the scent of roasted beans and blooming tulips. The city moved around her, indifferent and magnificent. She sat by the window, her latte untouched, watching people hurry by in designer coats and polished shoes. Life went on, oblivious to her pain. But inside, something was shifting. The humiliation that once crushed her now solidified into resolve. If Manhattan had taught her anything, it was that appearances ruled, but power, real power, lived behind closed doors. And Emily Carter was finally ready to open them. Because the next time she stood in a room with Jason and Chloe, she wouldn't be the one wearing shame. She'd be the one holding power. Jason Miller woke to the sound of his phone buzzing on the marble nightstand. The sunlight filtered through the glass walls of his penthouse, casting a glow across the tangled sheets. Beside him, Chloe Barnes stirred, her hair spilling over the pillow like bronze silk. The remnants of last night's champagne glimmered in two half-empty flutes near the bed. He reached for the phone, squinting at the screen. Viral video: pregnant woman attacked at the Skylark. Jason's stomach dropped. The thumbnail showed Chloe mid-laugh, the glass of Coca-Cola still in her hand, Emily's shocked face blurred in the background. "You've got to be kidding me," he muttered, running a hand through his hair. Chloe yawned, stretching like a cat. "What's wrong, baby?" He turned the phone toward her. She blinked once, then shrugged. "Oh, come on, it's not that bad. It was just a joke." "A joke?" Jason's voice sharpened. "Chloe, you humiliated my wife, my pregnant wife, in front of everyone. Do you have any idea what this looks like?" She rolled her eyes and slipped out of bed, reaching for his crisp white shirt. "Correction," she said lightly. "Your ex-wife. You told me it was over." Jason exhaled, pacing toward the window. "It was supposed to be discreet. I told you not to draw attention." "Oh, please." Chloe buttoned the shirt halfway, smirking at her reflection. "The extra. You act like you didn't love it. The attention, the whispers. You wanted her to see us together." Jason turned, his jaw tightening. He wanted to deny it, but part of him knew she was right. A twisted part of him had wanted Emily to see him with Chloe, to feel regret, to realize she'd lost him. But he hadn't expected it to explode like this. The video had gone viral overnight. Clients were calling. His boss had already texted, "We need to talk about PR damage." Meanwhile, Chloe poured herself a mimosa, completely unfazed. "Relax, the internet forgets fast. By next week, everyone will be gossiping about some TikTok scandal." Jason stared at her. How could she be so calm? So reckless? He thought back to when they'd met, a company conference in Chicago, where she'd charmed him with her confidence and playful energy. She'd been irresistible, always pushing boundaries, always making him feel younger, freer. But now that same wildness felt dangerous. He sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing his temples. "You don't understand," he said quietly. "Emily isn't just some random woman. Her family's complicated." Chloe laughed. "Complicated how? You mean her brother, the one who lives somewhere in Europe or whatever? What's he gonna do, send mean texts?" Jason hesitated. He'd never told Chloe the full story. He'd never told anyone. Michael Carter wasn't some distant sibling with a 9-to-5 job. The man was a ghost in every New York business deal, a whisper in every backroom negotiation. People said he'd built an empire from the ashes of his parents' real estate fortune, and that he ruled it with quiet ruthlessness. But Jason had always believed those stories were exaggerated. After all, Emily never spoke about him. She'd kept her family out of sight, out of conversation. Still, something in his gut twisted as he remembered the look on her face last night. Not fear, not even sorrow, just cold composure. Across the room, Chloe's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and frowned. "Weird. Some private number keeps calling." "Don't answer," Jason said sharply. She smirked. "Why? You think it's your wife?" He didn't reply. Outside the window, a pair of black cars parked along the street below. Two men in dark suits stepped out. Scanning the area before heading inside the building, Jason's blood ran cold. because for the first time in his carefully curated life, he realized he might have provoked someone who didn't play by the rules. By noon, the video from the Skylark had reached over 2 million views. Every gossip account in New York had reposted it. Pregnant wife doused in coke at rooftop party. The clip played on repeat across social media. Emily flinching as Chloe's drink splashed across her belly, Jason frozen in silence, the crowd murmuring. The comments were brutal. Some mocked, some pitied, but all of them knew her name, Emily Carter, the woman humiliated for sport. She sat alone in her small living room, scrolling through the chaos. Her phone buzzed nonstop, calls from friends, texts from old classmates, even her clients asking if she was okay. Every vibration sent a spike of pain through her temples. She set the phone face down on the table beside her untouched cup of Starbucks coffee, now gone cold. She had spent the morning trying to calm her breathing, to focus on the soft rhythm of her baby's movements. But the memory of that night refused to fade. The laughter, the flashing lights, the way Jason didn't defend her, the way Chloe smiled like a predator who knew she could get away with it. The world outside her window moved on, indifferent. Delivery trucks honked. A mother pushed a stroller across the street. 2 teenagers laughed over iced drinks. Everything looked so normal, and Emily hated it. Then her phone lit up again. This time, it was Michael. Michael, turn on channel 8, now. Her pulse quickened. She grabbed the remote, switching on the TV. The screen filled with an image of Jason and Chloe leaving their building, surrounded by paparazzi. Microphones thrust toward them. Questions fired like bullets. Jason, any comment on the viral video? Chloe, do you regret attacking a pregnant woman? Is it true she's still your wife? Jason's face was pale, his jaw tight. Chloe tried to smile for the cameras, but her voice cracked as she muttered something about a misunderstanding. The reporters kept shouting. Someone asked about Michael Carter. Jason froze. The camera caught it perfectly, the flicker of panic in his eyes before he pushed through the crowd and into a waiting car. Emily's breath caught. Michael's name was public now. That meant the city was paying attention. That meant Jason and Chloe had just crossed a line they couldn't erase. Her phone rang again. She answered, her voice trembling. Michael, don't worry about the video, he said calmly. I've already started cleaning it up. What do you mean? Damage control. You don't need to see what happens next. Michael, please, she whispered. I don't want this to become... Too late, he interrupted. They made it public. Now it's my turn. The line went dead. Emily stared at the phone, her heart pounding. She knew her brother too well. Michael didn't make empty threats. When he said he was handling something, it meant someone was about to learn what real consequences looked like. But she wasn't ready for what happened next. That afternoon, Jason's company issued a formal statement condemning unprofessional behavior at a corporate event. Chloe was temporarily suspended pending investigation. Within hours, her social media accounts vanished. Anonymous insiders leaked rumors of Jason's misconduct at work. A photo surfaced of him leaving Chloe's apartment in the middle of the night. Perfectly timed, perfectly damning. It wasn't the law that came for them. It was reputation. The one currency in Manhattan that could destroy faster than bullets. Emily didn't know whether to feel vindicated or terrified. She hadn't lifted a finger, yet the city was already turning against them. And somewhere out there, her brother was pulling strings she couldn't see. As dusk fell, she looked out at the Manhattan skyline, the lights flickering like embers in a storm. For the first time since the humiliation, she felt something dangerous stirring inside her. Something that tasted like justice. But justice, in Michael's hands, never came without a price. That night, the city lights blurred into streaks through Emily's tears. She sat curled on the couch, wearing one of Jason's old hoodies that still smelled faintly of his cologne. Her apartment was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the soft ticking of the wall clock. Every second felt like a reminder of how long she'd been alone, how long she'd believed in a man who didn't even look at her when she was humiliated in front of the world. The viral video had changed everything. Strangers now knew her face. Her inbox overflowed with messages, some kind, others cruel. One woman wrote, "You deserve better." Another sneered, "You should have seen it coming." Men don't cheat for no reason. Emily closed her laptop, her chest aching. She walked to the window, the city's glow casting pale light over her belly. She pressed her hands against the glass, whispering to the little life inside her. "It's just you and me now." Her reflection stared back, tired eyes, cracked lips, hair pulled into a messy bun. A part of her wanted to scream, to shatter the glass, to make someone feel the storm inside her. But she was too tired to rage. She just felt hollow. A knock on the door startled her. She turned, heart pounding. When she opened it, a tall man in a dark coat stood there, holding a plain white envelope. His expression was blank, professional. "Miss Carter," he said quietly. "Mr. Carter asked me to deliver this." Before she could respond, he placed the envelope in her hand and walked away. No explanation. No small talk. Just silence. She closed the door and tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No letterhead, no signature. Just 5 words, typed neatly in the center. "You will not cry again." Her knees gave out. She sank to the floor, the paper trembling in her hand. Michael. Of course it was Michael. Only he could send a message that felt both comforting and terrifying at once. The next morning, Emily woke to chaos online. Jason's company stock had dropped overnight. Anonymous sources were leaking financial documents. Chloe's name was trending again, this time for the wrong reasons. Her luxury brand endorsements were being pulled one by one. Someone had sent screenshots of her private messages to the media, messages full of arrogance and mockery about the pregnant loser. Emily felt sick. This wasn't what she wanted. She wanted dignity, not destruction. But she also couldn't deny the dark satisfaction curling in her chest. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "Hello? Emily?" It was Jason. His voice was raw, tight. "We need to talk." She almost laughed. "Now you want to talk?" "Everything's falling apart," he said quickly. "The press, the company, they're killing me. I need you to make a statement, say the rumors aren't true." "Which ones?" she asked flatly. "The cheating or the assault?" "Emily, please," he said, lowering his voice. "I know your brother's behind this. You have to tell him to stop before someone gets hurt." Her grip tightened around the phone. "You should have thought about that before you let your mistress pour coke on my belly." Silence. Then a shaky breath. "He's dangerous, Em. You don't know what he's capable of." "I do," she whispered. "He's my brother." She hung up, her pulse racing. For the first time she realized Jason was scared, not of losing his job, but of Michael. That night, Emily sat by the window again, holding the letter. Outside, the city shimmered under a thin drizzle. Somewhere out there, her brother was rewriting the balance of power, and her enemies were beginning to drown in their own sins. And yet, despite the chaos, Emily felt something strange rising inside her. Strength. Because the woman who had cried herself to sleep for months had finally learned how to stop, and tomorrow she would learn how to fight. The rain hit the window like a slow, steady drum. Emily sat at her kitchen table, the soft hum of the city beneath her, her laptop glowing faintly in the dim light. She hadn't slept in 2 days. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Jason's face, the look of panic, the hint of regret. But now she also saw something else, opportunity. Her phone buzzed again. It wasn't Jason this time. It was Michael. "Go. Be at the plaza. Noon. Don't ask why." No explanation, no warning, just an order. She sighed, slipping on her black trench coat and tying her hair into a loose bun. The Plaza Hotel had always been a place of dreams for her, a palace of marble and chandeliers where fairy tales were supposed to begin. But today, it was where the old Emily Carter would end. A sleek black Mercedes waited outside her building. The driver opened the door without a word. Emily climbed in, the leather seats cold beneath her hands. Midtown passed in a blur of traffic and umbrellas. When the car finally stopped, she took a deep breath and stepped into the grand lobby of the plaza. The air smelled of polished wood and expensive perfume. The marble floors gleamed under golden light. She spotted Michael near the lounge, seated at a private table with a view of Fifth Avenue. He looked perfectly composed in his tailored navy suit, a Mont Blanc pen clipped neatly to his pocket. But the faint tension in his jaw told her everything. Something serious was unfolding. He gestured for her to sit. "You look better," he said softly. "I'm surviving," she replied. "What's going on?" He slid a sleek black folder across the table. Inside were photographs, Jason and Chloe, laughing at a dinner, meeting with investors, whispering at rooftop parties. But these weren't paparazzi shots. They were surveillance photos, sharp, close, Private. What is this? Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Evidence, Michael said calmly. They've been leaking confidential information from Jason's company to a rival firm. Industrial espionage. That's a federal crime. Emily stared at the images, her pulse pounding. How do you even have this? Michael smiled faintly. I have friends who owe me favors. She looked up sharply. You hacked them? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Michael, this is too much. I didn't want him ruined. Michael leaned forward, his tone colder. He ruined himself the moment he let that woman touch you. You think this is about revenge? No, Emily. This is about respect. You were humiliated publicly. Now they'll be exposed publicly. She swallowed hard. What happens next? I've already arranged it, he said, checking his Rolex. Tonight, the documents will go to a reporter at the Ledger. Tomorrow morning, every headline in this city will have their names on it. By noon, they'll be untouchable. No company will hire them again. Emily's stomach twisted. You can't. I can, he interrupted smoothly, and I will. She looked at her brother, the man who had always protected her, but now she saw the other side of him, the ruthless tactician who could destroy lives with a phone call. He wasn't bluffing. Michael, she said quietly, what if this gets out of control? He met her gaze without flinching. Then it's out of control for them, not for you. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The orchestra music from the hotel lobby drifted softly in the background. Somewhere, a woman laughed over champagne. The contrast felt surreal, chaos hidden beneath elegance. Finally, Michael stood and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Go home, Em. Rest. Tomorrow, you'll wake up in a world where no one dares to laugh at you again. As he walked away, Emily sat frozen, the folder still open before her. Her reflection shimmered in the glossy photographs, half angel, half avenger. And for the first time, she understood what true power looked like. Because when her brother fought, he didn't just fight for blood, he fought for legacy. The morning sun rose over Manhattan like a spotlight, slicing through the clouds and glinting off the glass towers of Fifth Avenue. In a quiet corner of the city, Emily Carter stood before her bathroom mirror, staring at a woman she barely recognized. The swelling around her eyes had faded. The softness in her voice had hardened. The bruised heart that once whispered forgiveness had gone silent. It had been exactly 1 week since Michael released the files. Jason's company was in freefall. His board had suspended him indefinitely. Chloe had been fired, her reputation torn to shreds by every gossip outlet in New York. But Emily hadn't celebrated. She hadn't even left her apartment. She'd spent the week in silence, letting the city talk while she planned her next move. Now, standing beneath the soft hum of the vanity lights, she knew the mourning period was over. She slipped on a simple black dress that hugged her body just enough to remind the world she was no victim. Her hair, once always tied up in a hurried bun, now fell in loose waves over her shoulders. She painted her lips a deep crimson, a color she hadn't worn since before Jason. It looked powerful, dangerous, alive. Her phone buzzed. A text from Michael. Michael. Driver's waiting. Boardroom. 11 a.m. Boardroom? Emily frowned. She had no idea what he meant. But when it came to Michael, explanations always came second. Downstairs, the same black Mercedes waited. The driver nodded respectfully as she entered. Good morning, Miss Carter. The ride through Manhattan felt different today. The streets she once passed without noticing now looked like something out of a movie. Glittering storefronts, the scent of espresso and ambition in the air. For the first time in months, Emily felt like she belonged here again. The car stopped in front of a sleek glass building on Park Avenue. A silver plaque by the entrance read, Carter Holdings. Emily froze. This is yours? The driver smiled faintly. It's yours, ma'am. Her pulse quickened as she stepped out. The lobby was modern and minimalist, marble floors, soft lighting, and a reception desk carved from Italian stone. Everyone she passed nodded politely, whispering her name. Michael was waiting in the executive conference room, a panoramic view of the skyline stretching behind him. He gestured toward the chair beside him. You made it. Michael, what is this? He slid a file across the table. Carter Interiors, he said. A new design firm, funded, registered, staff ready to go. You're the creative director and majority owner. Emily blinked. You did all this? No, he said simply. We did this. I just cleared the path. You'll walk it. She stared at the papers. A real company, her dream, rebuilt from the ashes. Michael continued, "You've spent too long hiding behind the wrong people. Jason took your confidence, but he didn't take your talent. Now I'm giving it back." Her voice wavered. "Why?" "Because the best revenge," he said, "is not destruction. It's domination." Emily laughed softly, a sound that surprised even her. For the first time in months, it wasn't bitter. It was sharp, electric, alive. When she looked up again, her brother was already on his phone, giving instructions in low, clipped tones. His world moved fast. But this moment, this gift, was hers to control. She ran her hand over the smooth surface of the table, imagining the future it held. Sketches, contracts, clients. Her own empire, born from humiliation. By the time she left the building, the city seemed to welcome her back. The air smelled cleaner. The noise felt like music. She passed a Tiffany window display and caught her reflection. Strong, poised, fearless. Emily Carter was no longer the woman who cried on the floor of her apartment. She was the woman who would walk into rooms that once pitied her and make them stand. And somewhere in the distance, Jason Miller was about to learn that the wife he betrayed was now the one rewriting his fate. The night of the gala arrived like a storm wrapped in diamonds. The Ritz-Carlton ballroom shimmered beneath chandeliers, the air thick with perfume, gossip, and the soft hum of Manhattan's elite. It was the annual Carter Holdings charity gala, Michael's event, but tonight Emily was the true host. As she stepped from the black Mercedes, flashbulbs exploded around her. Reporters shouted her name, their microphones gleaming beneath the gold light. Emily Carter, once the humiliated wife in a viral video, now looked every inch the woman the city couldn't stop talking about. Her midnight blue Dior gown glided like liquid light across the red carpet. A delicate Cartier necklace sparkled at her collarbone. She didn't flinch under the cameras this time. She owned them. Inside, the room hushed as she entered. Every conversation paused, every glass stilled. The whispers started immediately. "That's her. Emily Carter, the one from the video. God, she looks incredible. I heard she owns her own company now." Emily smiled faintly. "Let them talk." Michael greeted her with a nod across the room. He didn't need to say anything. His expression said it all. "It's your stage now." As the orchestra played softly in the background, Emily mingled with investors, journalists, and designers. People who once looked past her now fighting for a moment of her attention. Her calm voice, her composure, her quiet smile. It all told the same story. She was back, and she was untouchable. Then a ripple moved through the crowd. Heads turned toward the grand entrance. Jason Miller had arrived. He was wearing a black tuxedo that failed to hide his unease. His once confident stride was slower now, hesitant. On his arm, unbelievably, was Chloe Barnes, trying to fake her signature smile for the cameras that no longer cared. She'd lost her sponsors, her job, her influence. The red silk gown she wore couldn't hide the cracks beneath the surface. Emily's pulse quickened, but she didn't move. Instead, she sipped her champagne slowly, letting them see her first. Jason's eyes met hers across the ballroom, and he froze. The same woman he'd let be humiliated was now glowing under chandeliers, the center of a world he no longer belonged to. "Emily," he said, approaching cautiously, "you look beautiful." She tilted her head. "Thank you. You look." She paused, letting her gaze linger, nervous. Chloe laughed awkwardly. "We didn't expect to see you here." "Oh, I'm sure you didn't," Emily replied smoothly. "This event's for people who build things, not destroy them." Jason's jaw tightened. "Look, about what happened," she cut him off. "Don't," she said softly. "You've already said enough in front of the whole world." Chloe stepped forward, her tone defensive. "You think you're better than us now because your brother cleaned up your mess?" Emily's smile didn't waver. "No," she said calmly. I think I'm better than you because I don't need anyone to fight my battles anymore." The orchestra faded as Michael took the stage for his closing speech. But halfway through he paused, his gaze flicking to Emily. She nodded once. He smiled faintly. "Before we end tonight," Michael said, his voice echoing through the ballroom, "I'd like to announce the new sponsor of our Women's Empowerment Initiative, Carter Interiors, led by my sister, Emily Carter." Applause erupted. Cameras flashed again, this time for her. Jason and Chloe stood frozen, trapped under the same spotlight that once shamed Emily. She rose gracefully, her heels clicking against the marble floor as she approached the stage. She thanked the audience with poise, her eyes never leaving Jason's. "This project," she said into the microphone, "is for every woman who was ever laughed at, dismissed, or betrayed. Sometimes strength isn't born from success, it's born from humiliation." A thunder of applause filled the room. Jason lowered his gaze. Chloe turned pale. Emily smiled, placing the microphone down gently, because the woman they tried to break was now the one everyone stood for. The morning after the gala, New York City felt different. The air carried the faint scent of rain and redemption. Headlines across every digital screen flashed the same image. Emily Carter, radiant at the Carter Holdings gala, standing beside her brother Michael. The once forgotten woman from a scandalous video had become the symbol of rebirth. The city loved a comeback story, and Emily had just written the most unforgettable one. She stood by the window of her new office, high above Park Avenue. The space was bright and open, decorated with the clean lines and warm tones she'd always dreamed of. A vase of fresh white lilies sat on her desk, the same flowers she'd been holding the day she discovered Jason's betrayal. This time, they weren't a reminder of loss, they were a symbol of peace. Her assistant knocked gently on the door. "Miss Carter, there's someone here to see you." Emily turned. "Who?" The door opened before the answer came. Jason stepped in. He looked smaller somehow, septal, like the city had finally caught up to him. The confident man in the tailored suits was gone. His eyes carried exhaustion, regret, and the weight of 1,000 bad choices. "Emily," he said softly. She didn't invite him to sit. "You shouldn't be here." "I needed to see you," he replied. "I wanted to apologize." Emily crossed her arms, calm and unreadable. "For what part? The affair? The humiliation? Or the part where you stayed silent while I was mocked in front of everyone?" Jason flinched. "All of it." He hesitated, then stepped closer. "You were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I destroyed it. He stopped, voice breaking. "I just want you to know I see that now." She looked at him, really looked at him. For the first time, without love, without rage, just clarity. "You know, Jason," she said quietly, "I used to think if I forgave you, I'd get closure. But now I understand. Closure isn't forgiveness. It's peace." He swallowed hard. "And what about Chloe?" Emily's lips curved faintly. "I don't keep up with irrelevant people." Jason's eyes fell. "She left. After the story broke, she panicked. I lost my job, my reputation. Everything's gone." "Not everything," Emily said, glancing at his left wrist. "You still have your Rolex." He gave a humorless laugh. "Guess that's all I deserve." She didn't argue. Instead, she walked to her desk and picked up a sleek white envelope. "This came for you," she said, handing it over. Jason frowned. "From who?" "Michael." His hands shook slightly as he opened it. Inside was a check, an obscene amount of money, more than enough to rebuild his life. But beneath it was a single line, written in Michael's precise handwriting. "For services rendered in teaching my sister what weakness looks like." Jason looked up, stunned. "He's helping me?" Emily smiled softly. "He's giving you a second chance. What you do with it is up to you." For a long moment, they just stood there. Two people who had once shared everything, now divided by truths they couldn't change. Finally, Jason nodded, the tears in his eyes real this time. "You deserve better," he whispered. "I know," Emily said gently, "and I finally gave it to myself." He left without another word. The door closed. Silence returned. Emily exhaled deeply, her shoulders relaxing as sunlight spilled across the floor. Outside, the city buzzed with life, cars honking, people rushing, dreams being born. Her phone buzzed. A message from Michael. "Lunch? Central Park. I'll bring the good news." She smiled, grabbing her coat. Downstairs, as she walked through the lobby, the receptionist looked up from her desk. "Good morning, Miss Carter." Emily nodded. "Good morning." And as she stepped outside into the crisp air, she fully, for the first time, freedom. Not from pain, not from her past, but from the version of herself that once believed she needed saving. Because she wasn't the broken wife anymore. She was the woman who rose, rebuilt, and reclaimed everything they tried to take. The breeze off Central Park carried the faint scent of spring as Emily crossed the street, her heels clicking softly against the cobblestones. The city felt new again, cleaner, sharper, as if it had forgiven her. Or maybe she had finally forgiven herself. She spotted Michael sitting at their favorite table outside the Loeb boathouse, a cup of espresso in one hand, his phone in the other. He waved her over with a rare, genuine smile. "You're late," he said as she sat. "I was actually early," she replied with a smirk. You're just always annoyingly on time, he chuckled. Old habits. In my world, being late can get you killed. Emily rolled her eyes. Let's not talk about your world before lunch. He leaned back, studying her. You look lighter. I feel lighter. She glanced at the lake, the water glinting beneath the sunlight. For the first time in months, I woke up without anger. Michael nodded. That's how you know it's over. A waiter appeared, setting down 2 plates, salmon salad for Emily, steak for Michael. As the scent of seared butter drifted between them, she asked, So what's the good news? He smirked. 2, actually. First, your company just landed a partnership with the Plaza. They want Carter Interiors to redesign 3 of their executive suites. It's already trending on Forbes. Emily froze mid-bite. You're kidding. He slid his iPad toward her. There it was. Her name, her work, her story. From scandal to success, how Emily Carter redefined grace under fire. A full spread, glowing praise. Her eyes watered as she scrolled. I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to, Michael said, his tone soft. You did this on your own. I just cleared the noise so people could hear you again. And the second news? She asked. He smiled, finishing his espresso. Jason's leaving New York. Her fork paused. What? He sold his shares, shut down what's left of his business. He's moving to Miami, trying to start over. Emily exhaled, relief and melancholy mixing in her chest. Good, she said finally. Let him find peace somewhere else. Michael's gaze softened. You really have changed. I had to. She sipped her water, her voice steady. The old me kept waiting for someone to save her. The new me knows she already did. For a moment they just sat there, watching the rowboats drift across the lake. Children laughed in the distance. A couple posed for photos beneath the blooming trees. It was the kind of peaceful day Emily used to dream about during sleepless nights. Do you ever regret it? She asked suddenly. All the things you've done to protect me? Michael's jaw tightened slightly. Regret isn't useful, he said. But if I had to do it again, I would, every time. She reached across the table, placing her hand over his. Thank you, Michael, for everything. His expression softened, the mask of control slipping for just a second. You're my sister? That's all the reason I need. They finished lunch, and as Michael stood to leave, he said, Keep your chin up, Emily. The city watches people like us. Make sure they only ever see your crown. She laughed. You've been reading too many business quotes. Maybe, he said, winking as he walked away. Emily lingered at the table, savoring the warmth of the afternoon. When she finally stood to leave, a breeze lifted her hair, carrying with it the faint sound of music from a street performer nearby. As she passed him, he was singing an old tune about second chances and new beginnings. The words seemed to follow her all the way down the path. Emily Carter smiled to herself. The woman who had once been humiliated in front of the world was now untouchable. She wasn't running anymore. She wasn't hiding. She was home, in her city, in her power, in her peace. It was 3 weeks later when the past came knocking again. Emily had just finished a client meeting at the Plaza, her portfolio spread across the marble table like an artist's battlefield. The deal was sealed, her company was thriving, and for once she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Success no longer felt foreign, it felt earned. But as she stepped out of the elevator into the bright lobby, a familiar voice froze her mid-step. Emily? She turned, her pulse stuttering. Jason stood a few feet away, dressed in a casual gray suit that failed to disguise the exhaustion in his face. His hair was shorter now, his once proud posture slightly bent. Gone was the arrogance. What remained was a man hollowed out by his own choices. For a moment she said nothing. Just the sound of polished heels and murmured hotel chatter filled the silence between them. Then she said, What are you doing here? He hesitated. Had a meeting with a potential investor. They booked it here. I didn't expect to run into you. Emily's gaze was cool, steady. And yet, here we are. Jason exhaled, running a hand over his jaw. You look incredible. Flattery doesn't suit you anymore, she said evenly. He gave a weak smile. I deserve that. Emily started to walk past him, but his voice stopped her. Wait, please. She turned slightly, enough to see the desperation in his eyes. Make it quick. I just wanted to say thank you, he said. For the check, for not destroying me completely. Her brow furrowed. That wasn't me. That was Michael. I know, Jason said quietly. But it was you who didn't tell him to finish what he started. You could have ruined me, Emily, but you didn't. Why? She looked at him for a long moment, her reflection mirrored in the glass behind him. Because I didn't need to. You did that to yourself. He flinched, but nodded. You're right. I've spent weeks thinking about it, about what I did to you, to us. I just needed to see you one last time, to say goodbye the right way. Emily folded her arms, unsure whether to believe him. And then what? You vanish again? He looked down. No, I leave tomorrow, Miami. I have a chance to start a small firm there. Nothing big, just something honest. The honesty in his tone surprised her. For the first time she saw not the man who'd betrayed her, but the man she'd once loved before ambition poisoned him. I hope you do better this time, she said finally. He lifted his gaze. I hope so too. He hesitated again before reaching into his jacket pocket and pulling out a small envelope. I found this while packing. It's yours. She took it, curious. Inside was a photo, her and Jason, years ago, laughing on a Brooklyn rooftop, long before money and betrayal had twisted their story. On the back, in Jason's handwriting, were the words, "Once, we were good." Emily's chest tightened. For a fleeting second, the ache of nostalgia tugged at her, but then she folded the photo neatly and slipped it back into the envelope. Goodbye, Jason. He gave her a sad smile. Goodbye, Emily. And just like that, he walked out through the revolving doors into the bright New York afternoon, disappearing into the crowd. Emily stood still for a moment, the echo of his footsteps fading. Then she looked down at the envelope in her hand. One last ghost from a life that no longer belonged to her. She walked outside, the sunlight warm against her face, and tossed it gently into a nearby trash bin. Her past was gone. Her future, wide open. Because sometimes closure doesn't come from revenge, it comes from finally letting go. 2 days after Jason left New York, Emily was back in her office at Carter Interiors, reviewing design mock-ups for a luxury penthouse renovation on Fifth Avenue. The afternoon sun poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows, glinting off the model layouts and swatches of Italian marble spread across her desk. Success had begun to settle into her bones. It no longer felt temporary or fragile. But she had no idea that the next visitor through her glass doors would test everything she'd built. Her assistant, Lila, poked her head in. There's someone here asking for you, says it's urgent. Emily didn't look up from her notes. Client? Not exactly. Lila's tone faltered. It's a man named Adrian Blake. He says he's from the Manhattan Development Council. That caught her attention. The council controlled some of the city's biggest contracts, projects worth tens of millions. Emily smoothed her blazer and nodded. Send him in. A tall man with steel-gray hair and a confidence polished by years of boardrooms entered the office. His suit was charcoal, his cufflinks subtle gold, the scent of expensive cologne trailing behind him. He extended a hand. Miss Carter, it's a pleasure. I've heard about your remarkable turnaround. Emily shook his hand, cautious but polite. Mr. Blake, please have a seat. He sat, studying her with a faint smile. You've made quite the name for yourself in a short time. Carter Interiors is the talk of the industry. She folded her hands. We just do good work, that's all. He chuckled. Modesty suits you, but I'm not here just to compliment your work. I have an offer. Emily tilted her head. What kind of offer? Blake leaned forward. The city council is approving a new cultural complex, a museum and performance center near Central Park. We want you to lead the interior design and architectural vision. It's a multi-million-dollar contract. Her breath caught. This was the kind of project that could put her company in the global spotlight. Why me? She asked carefully. Because your story sells, Blake said simply. People love redemption, a woman who rose from scandal to success. Imagine that headline attached to a landmark. Something in his tone made her uneasy. And what would you need from me? He smiled thinly. Only cooperation and discretion. The project's backed by several private investors, names you might recognize. Jason Miller among them. The name hit her like a cold slap. Jason? Yes, Blake said, watching her reaction. He's part of the consortium funding the project. He specifically recommended you. Emily froze. He recommended me? Blake nodded. He said there's no one better. She stared at the polished surface of her desk, her thoughts colliding. After everything, after humiliation and loss, Jason was reaching out again, but not for reconciliation. For partnership. Blake continued. We'll need an answer by next week. It's a rare opportunity, Miss Carter. You could design the city's next icon. When he left, the office felt colder. Emily stood by the window, watching the taxis crawl below like yellow ants. She could practically hear Michael's voice in her head. Don't trust people who broke you once. But another voice whispered something else. What if this is the final step? The proof that she had truly won. She turned to her assistant. Layla, cancel my afternoon meetings. Layla blinked. Everything? Everything. I need to think. When the office door closed, Emily sank into her chair. She looked around at the space she'd built from ashes, the sunlight painting gold lines across the floor. Taking the contract meant stepping back into the same world that had destroyed her. Declining it meant walking away from history. For the first time since rebuilding her life, Emily Carter didn't know which choice was strength and which was surrender. Because sometimes victory doesn't look like triumph. Sometimes it looks like temptation dressed as opportunity. The city that night pulsed like a living thing, cars streaming down Park Avenue, windows glowing like molten gold, the hum of ambition thick in the air. Emily sat alone in her office, the contract from the Manhattan Development Council spread before her. The black ink gleamed under the desk lamp, elegant, final, and heavy with meaning. Her name was already printed at the top, Emily Carter, lead designer, Carter Interiors. All that was missing was her signature. She leaned back in her chair, staring at it as if it might speak. Working with Jason again. The idea felt like poison wrapped in silk. He was the reason her name had been dragged through tabloids, the reason she'd cried herself to sleep for months. Yet now he was offering her a project that could define her legacy. She pressed her fingers against her temples, trying to quiet the storm in her head. This wasn't just business, it was emotional quicksand. The door opened quietly. Michael stepped in without knocking. You're still here. Emily didn't look up. You knew, didn't you? Knew what? That Jason was one of the investors. Her tone was sharp, edged with hurt. Michael sighed and set his Mont Blanc pen on her desk. Of course, I knew. You think I let a project that big get near you without checking every name on the list? Then why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted to see what you'd do when faced with him again, he said calmly. You talk about independence, about being your own woman. Well, this is what that looks like. Making your own choices without me shielding you. She stood abruptly, frustration boiling over. You think this is some kind of test? It's life, Em, he said evenly. You can't build an empire and avoid ghosts. They live in the same skyline. Emily turned away, staring out the window. The city lights blurred against her reflection. He's trying to redeem himself, she murmured. Or maybe he's trying to control the narrative again. Either way, I don't know if I can stomach seeing him in meetings, pretending like nothing happened. Michael walked closer, his voice softening. Then don't do it for him. Do it for you. Do it because this city once laughed at you, and now it's waiting to applaud you. She didn't respond. He picked up the contract, flipped to the final page, and set it back down in front of her. Power doesn't mean avoiding the people who hurt you. It means walking into the same room and making them bow. Emily stared at the signature line. The silence between them was electric, filled with all the unspoken years of protection, pain, and pride. Finally, she exhaled. If I sign this, I'm not doing it for revenge. Michael smiled faintly. Good, because revenge is temporary. Legacy lasts. He left her then, his cologne lingering faintly in the air, a mix of cedar and control. Alone again, Emily reached for the silver pen resting on her desk. Her hand hovered over the paper. Her heart pounded. She thought of the girl who once begged Jason to come home. The woman who'd stood shaking on that rooftop, Coca-Cola dripping down her dress. And now she was here, standing at the pinnacle of her own creation. The pen touched the page. The sound of her name written in ink felt like thunder in her chest. She signed. Then she whispered to the empty room, "This time, I own the story." Outside, lightning flashed over the Manhattan skyline, as if the city itself acknowledged her decision. Because sometimes the greatest power isn't found in revenge or forgiveness. It's found in the courage to walk back into the fire and not burn. The conference room at the Manhattan Development Council gleamed with sterile perfection. Chrome fixtures, glass walls, and a panoramic view of Central Park that made the city look almost gentle. Emily Carter sat at the long table, a folder of design concepts neatly arranged before her. Her heartbeat was steady, but her palms were cold. This was her first meeting with the full team of investors, and one of them was Jason Miller. The door opened behind her, and she knew it was him before she turned. His footsteps were the same, measured, confident, practiced. When he finally spoke, his voice carried that familiar smoothness, but beneath it was something she'd never heard before: restraint. "Good morning, everyone." Emily didn't look up. She kept her eyes on her sketches, blueprints for a gallery atrium wrapped in light and glass, a place meant to make visitors feel reborn. How ironic, she thought, that she was designing a space about renewal while sitting across from the man who once broke her. Jason took his seat directly opposite her. The other investors, 3 men in tailored suits and 1 elegant woman, began the usual introductions. Emily listened, nodded, contributed when needed, her tone calm and professional. But she could feel his gaze on her, like static electricity. After the meeting began, Jason finally spoke. "Miss Carter," he said formally, "I've reviewed your concept proposals, and I must say, they're extraordinary. You've outdone yourself." She looked up at him then, expression unreadable. "Thank you, Mr. Miller. I appreciate your confidence in my work." The use of titles wasn't lost on anyone in the room. The tension was subtle, but it hummed. For the next hour, they discussed lighting angles, material sourcing, and cost projections. Emily spoke with precision and poise, fielding every question with authority. It was her arena now. Jason didn't interrupt once. When she finished, the board unanimously approved her initial designs. As everyone stood to leave, the lead council member said, "Excellent work, Miss Carter. We look forward to seeing Phase 2. When the room emptied, Jason lingered. Emily began gathering her files, pretending not to notice, but when she reached for her pen, his voice stopped her. "Emily," he said quietly, "please, just for a moment." She froze, then looked up slowly. He looked older now. The sharpness around his eyes had softened into regret. "You don't need to be afraid of me," he said. "I'm not," she replied evenly. "But I do have work to do." He gave a small, tired smile. "You've changed. People do that after they're humiliated in front of an entire city." He winced. "I deserve that. I won't ask you to forget, but I do want you to know that I meant what I said before. I recommended you for this project because you're the best, not because I wanted to make amends." Emily arched an eyebrow. "You expect me to believe that?" "No," he said honestly. "I just needed to say it." She studied him for a moment, trying to read the truth in his eyes. Once, she had believed every word he said. Now she wasn't sure she believed in words at all, only actions. Finally, she nodded. "Then say nothing else. Let the work speak for both of us." He looked at her for a long moment, then extended his hand. For a heartbeat, she hesitated, but then she shook it, firm and controlled. The touch meant nothing, but to everyone watching from the glass hallway, it looked like professionalism. As she left the conference room, the city skyline reflected off the mirrored walls, a woman walking away from the ghost of her past toward the empire she built herself. Because power wasn't about never facing the people who hurt you, it was about standing taller when you did. 2 weeks into the project, the rhythm of Emily's new life felt steady again. Her designs for the cultural complex were moving ahead beautifully, and every major publication in New York was praising Carter Interiors for its innovation and elegance. For once, the noise surrounding her wasn't about scandal. It was about success. But peace in Manhattan never lasted long. It started on a Thursday morning. Her assistant, Lila, entered her office holding a tablet, her face pale. "Emily, you need to see this." Emily looked up from her sketches. "What's wrong?" Lila hesitated, then turned the screen around. On it was a gossip headline splashed across a major online magazine. "Emily Carter and Jason Miller, the affair rekindled?" Below it were grainy photos of Emily and Jason leaving the council building together after their last meeting, laughing at something. The headline twisted the moment into something salacious. Emily's stomach turned. "You've got to be kidding me." "It's spreading fast," Lila said. "Twitter, business pages, everyone's talking about it." Emily scrolled through the comments. Some congratulated her for forgiving Jason. Others accused her of using him to climb higher. The cruelty of strangers once again filled her screen. She took a deep breath. "This is nothing. We'll issue a statement denying it." But the next day another article appeared, this one more dangerous. Sources close to the project claim tension between the Carter siblings and Jason Miller could threaten the deal. It named Michael, implying he was using underworld influence to control city contracts. Emily's blood ran cold. Someone was playing a deeper game. Her phone rang. Michael's name flashed on the screen. She answered immediately. "You've seen it?" "I've seen it," he said, voice clipped. "Do you know who's behind it?" "No, but I can guess." "Chloe Barnes," he muttered. "She's been calling around, talking to reporters. I warned you she'd resurface." Emily rubbed her temples. "Let her talk. The truth will win." "Emily," Michael said sharply, "truth doesn't win in this city. Leverage does. I can silence her in a day if you let me." "Michael, no. I'm not doing that again. I won't fix lies with fear." He sighed. "You're too good for this world, Em, but fine. You handle it your way. Just remember, if they come for you again, I won't wait for permission." When the call ended, Emily felt the familiar ache of exhaustion. The constant tug-of-war between morality and survival. She'd rebuilt her name from ashes, and now one rumor threatened to stain it again. Later that afternoon, as she reviewed blueprints in the meeting room, Jason walked in. His expression was tight. "I assume you've seen the articles?" "Yes," she said coldly. "Congratulations, you're famous again." "Emily, I swear I had nothing to do with this." "Doesn't matter," she replied. "It's your name next to mine that makes it believable." He hesitated. "I can help fix this. I'll talk to the press, set the record straight." She turned to him, eyes sharp. "The last time you tried to fix something, I ended up drenched in coke on a rooftop." Jason's face fell. "I deserve that. But please, let me do one decent thing." She studied him for a moment. He looked sincere, broken even. "Fine," she said finally. "One statement, that's it." That evening, Jason held a brief press conference. He denied any romantic connection, praised Emily's professionalism, and called the rumors cruel fabrications. His tone was calm, humble, and, most surprisingly, truthful. By the next morning, the story began to fade. Public sympathy swung back toward Emily. But in the quiet corners of the internet, whispers continued about Michael's reach, about Jason's guilt, about power and secrets. Emily knew it wasn't over. The city had started watching her again, not with admiration, but with curiosity. Because when a woman rises too high in New York, someone always tries to pull her back down. The following week, Manhattan buzzed with whispers again. Emily could feel it everywhere. The subtle stares at business lunches, the lingering questions in every interview. The rumor storm had quieted, but something in the air felt wrong. Too quiet. Like the city was holding its breath before another blow. That blow came on a Tuesday morning. Emily was in her office, reviewing renderings for the Central Park Cultural Complex, when her phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "You built your empire on dirty money. We're about to prove it." Her blood turned to ice. She called Michael immediately. "I just got a message," she said. "Someone's threatening me." Michael's voice on the other end was calm but clipped. "Forward it to me, now." "I think they're talking about you," she whispered. He paused. "Don't move from your office. I'm sending someone over." 30 minutes later, two of Michael's men, clean-cut, suited, the kind who blended into high-end environments, walked into her office and swept it for bugs. One found a small recording device hidden behind the vase of orchids on her shelf. Emily stared at it, horrified. "Someone's been listening to me?" "Yes," one of the men said. "For weeks, probably." By afternoon, every major news outlet had the story. Whistleblower claims Carter Interiors used Mafia funds to secure city contracts. The article mentioned anonymous sources, financial irregularities, and even cited ties to Michael Carter's underground dealings. The accusation was explosive. Emily's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Clients demanded statements. Investors wanted reassurance. Her staff looked panicked. By evening, the project's board called an emergency meeting. Jason was already there when she arrived, sitting at the end of the long glass table, face pale. "Emily, I had nothing to do with this," he said as she entered. "I didn't ask," she replied coldly, taking her seat. The chairman cleared his throat. "Miss Carter, until this investigation is resolved, we're forced to suspend Carter Interior's contract with the city." Emily froze. "Suspend? You can't." "It's temporary," the chairman said quickly. "But we can't risk public backlash. You understand." Jason stood abruptly. "This is ridiculous. None of this is true." The chairman looked uneasy. Mr. Miller, given your involvement, your statements could be seen as biased. Emily's chest tightened. She could feel every eye on her, every whisper crawling up her spine. I've worked too hard to lose everything because of a rumor, she said, her voice trembling but fierce. We don't deal in rumors, Miss Carter, the chairman said. We deal in perception. Those words cut deeper than any insult. After the meeting, Emily walked out into the cold evening air, her breath clouding in the light of the street lamps. Cameras were already waiting outside the building. Flashes burst like lightning as reporters shouted her name. Miss Carter, are you linked to the Manhattan Mafia? Is your brother funding your business illegally? Are the allegations true? She didn't answer. She pushed past them, ducking into the waiting Mercedes. Inside, Michael sat waiting, his expression unreadable. Who did this? She demanded. He handed her a tablet. On the screen was a financial report, one of her private documents, leaked to the press. At the bottom of the email chain was a familiar name, Jason Miller. Emily stared, disbelief turning to fury. He leaked it? Michael nodded slowly. He was supposed to protect you. Instead, he sold you out for leverage. Her stomach twisted. After everything, after I gave him a second chance? Michael's voice dropped to a dangerous calm. People like him don't change. They just wait for another angle. Emily's eyes burned with rage and heartbreak. The city lights reflected off her tears, sharp as glass. She whispered, "Then it's my turn." Michael met her gaze. "Good," he said, "because tomorrow the world learns what betrayal really looks like. Because when a woman loses everything twice, she stops crying and starts calculating." The next morning, Manhattan awoke to chaos, and Emily Carter was done being the victim of it. The air outside her penthouse was cold, sharp with winter wind, but her mind was burning with purpose. She hadn't slept, not because of fear, but because of planning. Every headline that painted her as corrupt would soon be rewritten. Every lie Jason spread would collapse on him like glass under pressure. She stood before the mirror, pulling her hair into a sleek bun. The woman who looked back at her wasn't fragile anymore. Her eyes were steady, her voice low, her movements deliberate. She wore a black Dior suit, crisp, commanding, and a pair of diamond stud earrings Michael had given her years ago with a single note: "Power should always shine quietly." Her phone buzzed. "Michael. Michael, everything's in motion. Press conference at 11. You ready?" Emily typed back, "More than ready." By the time she arrived at the Carter Holdings building, reporters swarmed the steps like vultures. Flashbulbs exploded, voices shouted her name. She didn't flinch. She walked past them, the heels of her Louboutins clicking against marble like gunfire. Inside, the conference room was already set. Rows of cameras, microphones, and city officials waiting for her statement. Michael stood by the window, his usual calm demeanor replaced by something colder, sharper. "They want blood," he said quietly, "so give them truth instead." Emily nodded. When she stepped up to the podium, the room buzzed with tension. Cameras flashed, recorders clicked. She took a breath, met every pair of eyes in front of her, and began. "Good morning," she said, her voice clear. "For the past 24 hours, I've been accused of using criminal money to build my company. That's a lie. And today, I'll prove it." She clicked the remote in her hand. Behind her, the screen lit up with documents. Bank statements, tax filings, contracts. Every number, every date, perfectly aligned. "These are the financial records for Carter Interiors since its founding," she continued. "Every dollar is traceable, every audit public, but what's most interesting is where the false data came from." The screen changed again, to an email chain between Jason Miller and a freelance journalist. The subject line read, "Urgent, story leak, make her bleed." Gasps filled the room. Emily's gaze didn't waver. "This," she said, "is what betrayal looks like when you give a man your trust twice." A journalist raised a hand. "Are you saying, Mr. Bach, Miller fabricated the evidence?" "I'm saying," Emily replied, "he weaponized fiction for power. But in New York, power built on lies doesn't last long." She stepped back, letting the room erupt into questions. Michael signaled to his team. Within minutes, Jason's leaked emails were being blasted to every major outlet. By the time Emily left the building, the narrative had already shifted. Outside, reporters swarmed again, this time not to attack, but to applaud. "Miss Carter, how did you uncover the emails? Will you press charges against Mr. Miller?" Emily paused on the steps, her coat billowing in the wind. "I won't need to," she said simply. The truth always collects its own debt. Across town, Jason Miller's name was already trending for all the wrong reasons. His investors had pulled out, his firm suspended his contract, and his reputation, so carefully rebuilt, was crumbling. Back inside her car, Emily finally exhaled. Michael sat beside her, smirking faintly. "You handled that beautifully." She smiled, eyes still fixed on the skyline. "I didn't handle it. I exposed it." He glanced at her. "So what's next?" Emily looked out the window as the city glimmered below. "Next," she said, "I stop surviving and start ruling." The car merged into traffic, Manhattan's towers rising like silent witnesses around them. Somewhere, far above the noise, Emily Carter's name was no longer a scandal. It was a statement. Because when the world tries to bury a woman, it forgets she was born knowing how to rise. By the next morning, Manhattan was a battlefield of headlines. Every paper, every blog, every finance channel carried the same story. Jason Miller exposed for corporate sabotage. The photographs were brutal. Jason being escorted out of his office, security badges revoked, his face hollowed by disbelief. His fall was public, swift, and absolute. Emily Carter watched it unfold from her penthouse balcony, the city glimmering below her like a living witness. She wasn't celebrating. She didn't need to. The satisfaction wasn't in his destruction. It was in the silence that followed. For once, no one was questioning her integrity. No one was laughing at her pain. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Michael. "It's done. He's finished. The press has the rest." Emily set the phone down, her fingers trembling slightly. It was over, but the victory felt heavier than she'd imagined. The cost of survival always did. She turned to the glass doors as Lila, her assistant, entered the room carrying a folder. "The board wants you at the ribbon-cutting ceremony next week," Lila said. "They're calling it the Emily Carter Project." Emily smiled faintly. "That's absurd." "It's brilliant," Lila said. "You've become a symbol. They love a woman who rises from ashes." "Yeah," Emily murmured, "as long as they never have to see the fire." After Lila left, Emily sat at her desk. A single email sat unopened in her inbox, from Jason. The subject line read, "For what it's worth." Her finger hovered over the mouse. Then, against her better judgment, she clicked. "Emily, I know you'll never forgive me, and I don't expect you to. I didn't leak those files for money. I did it because I thought Michael would protect you the same way he protects everything else, with control. I was wrong. I wanted to prove you didn't need him, but all I did was prove you didn't need me. I've lost everything, but I guess that's what I deserved. Still, I hope someday you'll understand. It wasn't about revenge. It was about not wanting to be the villain in your story anymore. Jason." Emily stared at the words, her heart caught somewhere between anger and pity. He was right about one thing: he was the villain, but he didn't understand the truth. Villains weren't born, they were built by choices. Her phone rang again. Michael, of course. "Did you see the news?" he asked, voice almost light. "He's on a plane to Chicago. The man's running." "I read his email," Emily said quietly. "Delete it." She didn't answer. "Em," he said firmly, "don't start feeling sorry for him. He chose this path. You just finished it." "I know," she said softly, "but maybe that's the problem. I'm tired of finishing wars I didn't start." There was a pause. Then Michael's voice softened. "Then stop fighting them. Let this be the end." After the call, Emily walked back to the balcony. The sky above Manhattan was streaked in gold and violet, the city pulsing beneath her like a heartbeat. Somewhere out there, Jason was disappearing, another name erased by his own greed. She opened her hand. The phone still held his email, glowing faintly. Then, with one steady motion, she deleted it. Gone, no trace. For the first time in years, the act of letting go didn't feel like surrender. It felt like release. She whispered into the wind, "No more ghosts." The sound was carried off by the city, lost in the hum of traffic and life. Inside, her reflection caught in the glass. A woman who had endured humiliation, betrayal, and war, and still stood tall. The kind of strength that didn't need applause. Because Jason Miller's fall wasn't her triumph. Her triumph was that she no longer needed him to fall for her to rise. And in the city that once buried her name in scandal, Emily Carter had finally become untouchable. The morning of the ribbon-cutting ceremony dawned bright and cold, the kind of New York morning that carried both promise and pressure in the air. Central Park glimmered under a thin veil of frost. the skyline mirrored in the glass facade of the new cultural complex that now stood as a symbol of rebirth. Her design, her vision. Cameras lined the street. A crowd gathered, city officials, journalists, art patrons, and employees of Carter Interiors. The building's name shone in sleek silver letters across the marble entrance. The Carter Center for Arts and Design. Emily stood behind the curtain, dressed in a soft ivory coat over a black turtleneck and tailored pants. Her hair was tied back, her makeup natural. She didn't need glamour tonight. The world already knew who she was. Michael stood beside her, as calm as ever in his tailored navy suit. "You nervous?" he asked quietly. She smiled faintly. "No, just grateful." Michael adjusted his cufflinks, giving her a rare look of pride. "You earned this, every inch of it." She turned toward the glass doors, where the reflection of the crowd shimmered like light on water. "Do you ever think about how it started?" she asked. "The coke, the laughter, the shame." He nodded. "I think about how it ended instead." Emily exhaled, a small, trembling smile breaking through. "Then let's make sure this chapter begins better." When her name was announced, applause rippled through the crowd. Emily stepped out into the morning light, the cold air biting her cheeks, her heart beating like a steady drum. Cameras flashed, microphones reached forward, and yet she felt no fear, only peace. She approached the podium, her voice carrying across the plaza. "2 years ago," she began, "I stood on a rooftop covered in Coca-Cola, humiliated in front of strangers. I thought my life was over. But pain has a strange way of sculpting strength, and sometimes you have to break to rebuild something worth living for." The audience fell silent, every word hanging in the crisp air. "This building," she continued, "isn't just a space for art. It's proof that grace can grow from ruin, that dignity can be rebuilt brick by brick. It's for every woman who has ever been mocked, dismissed, or betrayed, and found her way back, not to who she was, but to who she was meant to be." A soft murmur of emotion swept through the crowd. Even the mayor, seated in the front row, leaned forward, visibly moved. Emily picked up the silver scissors, the ribbon shimmering red in the sunlight. She paused, looking out at the city that had once devoured her. Then, with one clean cut, she declared it open. The applause thundered through the plaza, echoing off the glass walls of the building. Michael clapped first, a proud, silent gesture that meant more than any words. Lila wiped tears from her eyes. Reporters shouted questions, but Emily didn't answer. She simply smiled, lifted her chin, and let the applause wash over her. Later, inside the building's grand atrium, sunlight spilled through skylights onto marble floors and art installations, pieces she'd personally curated. One wall displayed a quote engraved in silver letters, "You will not cry again." Michael noticed it and smiled. "Your message?" She nodded. "Yours, actually." For a moment they stood there, surrounded by everything they'd built, not just structures, but survival. As guests filled the halls and laughter replaced gossip, Emily stepped onto the balcony overlooking Central Park. The wind tugged at her hair. The city stretched endlessly before her, glittering with second chances. Her phone buzzed with a single message from an unknown number. She opened it. "Congratulations, Emily. You deserved this. Jay." She read it once, then deleted it without hesitation. No bitterness, no anger, just closure. Because this was no longer a story about pain or revenge. It was about victory, the kind that doesn't shout but shines. And as the sun climbed higher over Manhattan, Emily Carter finally smiled, not because she'd survived, but because she had won. So that's how our story comes to an end. You're still here, aren't you? If you've stayed with me until this very moment, then something about Emily's journey must have touched your heart. Maybe because deep down, we've all been there. We've all faced betrayal, humiliation, or that one moment when life tried to break us. But as the Stoic Marcus Aurelius once wrote, what stands in the way becomes the way. Every wound, every setback, every loss, it all becomes the road that shapes who we are meant to be. Emily's story reminds us that dignity isn't given, it's rebuilt. That forgiveness isn't weakness, it's freedom. And that power isn't loud, it's quiet, calm, and steady, like self-respect. So tonight, wherever you are, take a deep breath. You don't have to fight the storm, you can learn to stand in it. Because healing isn't about going back, it's about walking forward stronger than before. If this story reached you in any way, give it a like. Share it with someone who needs a little strength today. And don't forget to subscribe, because our next story might just speak to your heart, too.